What's happening, everybody? Welcome into a brand new episode of Phightin Words. Anthony SanFilippo's here. I'm Bob Wankel. It's a special Thursday edition of the show because misery loves company. And what we saw at Citi Field this week with the Phillies and Mets, if you're on the Phillies side of things, it was absolutely miserable. And Anthony, you were up there for the final two games of the series. If anything could go wrong, it did for this team. And I think that there are a lot of questions about pretty much everything right now, spanning from the lineup to the declining core, to the bullpen, to the manager, to the way the team was constructed, to the willingness of the owner to spend money, thanks to the GM's comments this week, to what else you got. So I'll bring you in, and we're going to unpack all of it here.
Yeah, Bob. I mean, you reached out last night. I was driving back from that disaster up in Flushing. And it was watching them was like watching something Flushing. I mean, it was pretty bad up there in New York. And you said, we should do this tomorrow and not wait till Friday. And you were spot on with that, because this is, it's on everybody's mind right now that there is something rotten in the state of Denmark here. Like, there is something not right with the Phillies. And, we could sit here and say, well, listen, it's early, it's April, this series doesn't. And I was the one who said it the other day. I'm not going to get too high off of a win on this series. I'm not going to get low off of a loss of this series. It doesn't, a series in April ultimately doesn't matter in the grand scheme. But what this showed, and it wouldn't have mattered if it was the Mets, the Rockies, any team, it wouldn't have mattered. It's only magnified because it was the Mets, but the fact that the Phillies are playing the way that they're playing is a concern, and it has, again, nothing to do with the opponent. And you look at things, and it's like just everything is off. Yesterday was a perfect example, right? We talk about this team struggles with runners in scoring position. They go 5 for 12 yesterday, right? With runners in scoring
runs
position.
In the first 9 innings of the game.
Yeah. Like, they had 2 hits with runners in scoring position that didn't score a run.
Yeah.
Like, it's just all kind of just piling on the rabbit here, man. Like, everything that can go wrong is going wrong at once. And then you look, I look at the game yesterday, people are going to blame out the bullpen blew it again. I actually thought the bullpen pitched pretty darn well yesterday. I'm not even going to kill Romano yesterday. I'm just not. I know that the pitch to Alonso probably catches a little bit too much of the plate, but he had him off balance. He had him lunging for it. Alonso's a big boy, gets his barrel on it, hits a double. Okay. But, you get a duck fart, broken bat hit that beats you at the end. Look, he has not been good. I'm not trying to defend Jordan Romano as
you don't need to look. Jordan Romano stinks, but
all right.
Jordan Romano's not the issue here. Like,
right.
This is so far beyond one reliever struggling over the first 3.5 weeks of the season. Like, I wish that we could just get on this show and concentrate on Jordan Romano and say, man, if this guy was what he was supposed to be, everything would be all right. Like, this is so far beyond him, so that I don't even have it in me to come on this show and get into that, at least at the top here. I mean, you see all of this. People are chiming in. Like, I expect Bob to be our avatar for how disappointing this team is at the moment. I'm going to try my best here. I fear that the issue is that this is going to be sort of as angry as we get all year. Like, I'm afraid that we're going to get into June, July, August and go, this isn't even worth it. I can't even muster up the frustration to raise my voice or want to rip my hair out because I'm so resigned to what this is. Now, here's where I'm going to go with this today. I know you said it doesn't matter if it's the Rockies or the Mets or any team. It's more about the Phillies and how they're playing, and I get it, and I agree. However, and I know that this is storyline based. I know that this is a fan take, but like, you go up there against that team, and it looks exactly the same as it did in October, largely in part because it is the exact same team. And there is no way that you can ask a fan to process what they watched this week and not get angry about it, that you got your doors blown off by the Mets again. And like, Like,
You should be
it's
angry.
the Mets. Like, you've got to have something more than that. Like,
Yes.
they ended your dream season last year. You were
Yes.
supposed to be that team. And then the Mets, the stinking Mets, who we were laughing at in London last year, they end your year, and then you go up there and you play the same lifeless, uninspired, dreadful baseball where you just look like you have your tail between your legs from the very first friggin' inning through the very last inning over a 3-day span. Like, you've got to have more than that. Where's the, like, I don't want to say that, like, you know what, like, I'll say it, like, where's the balls at? Like, come on, man. Where are you? And I'm not saying that someone's got to go in the locker room yesterday after the game and throw a chair or, give the rally the troops speech, but like just from a pride standpoint, stop talking about it and go do it. Like, where is that with this team? There's no friggin' edge, man. I said it to you last week. I'm like, this looks like a slog already. And then people are jumping in on Twitter saying, oh, they're on pace for 96 wins. Why don't you relax? Because like the eyes tell you, they tell the story. This team has zero juice. There's zero juice on this team.
Bob, you're spot on with this. I'm not trying to tell fans that they shouldn't be upset with what just happened. They absolutely should. And it makes perfect sense that you would be upset because they just lost 3 to the Mets, who's the team that you hate the most, right? And look, I just sat there, and I got to be honest with you. I sat in that press box. You have all the New York media there. They're all talking about how the Mets are the best team in baseball, and I just sit there and roll my eyes because I'm telling you.
You can do that. Like, I know you've been doing this for 4 weeks now. It's the Mets, and it's the Mets. But like, I'll tell you what they did. They continue to throw the baseball well. I know they have a bunch of no-name guys, but I actually respect that. I love the fact that they have guys playing over their heads right now. Does that even out in time? Probably. Do they regress? Probably. But like, that's what I'm talking about. You have guys that going out and doing a job, playing for one another, playing with some energy, playing with some life. And the Phillies can sit there with their credentials all they want, and their big salaries and their $180 million of career earnings, but they don't play for one another right now. There is no juice. They don't play off of one another. They don't play with momentum. And that's what I like about the Mets. Like, I don't know what the Mets are going to do. Maybe we're going to do the LOL Mets thing in mid-July, and they're going to be, in the middle of the pack in ERA, and Tyler McGill is not going to look like Cy Young anymore. Like, okay, maybe, but like they're playing with a little bit of a vibe. They are.
Yeah. Kind of like the Phillies did. Kind of like the Phillies did at the beginning of last year, right? How did that work out?
Right, I understand that, and like maybe the adversity for the Phillies and putting them in a blender here early on, and people like me saying like they don't have it, they don't play with enough juice, and the entire city getting on them, much the way that the city got on Nick Sirianni after 4 weeks, and they go on to win the Super Bowl. Maybe that's what's going to happen here. But I mean, the fact of the matter is, like, we can sit here and go, oh, it's the Mets. I watch that Mets team, and the top of the lineup produces. They have real thumpers at the top. It's not a deep lineup. I know, I get that, but like, how about paying a shortstop big time money and him making a difference? Like, wouldn't that be nice rather than having a shortstop who has the 16th best OPS out of 21 qualified shortstops in baseball, who looks like he's asleep half the time? Like, that would be nice. Like, that team looks like they want it. One team looks like they want it right now, and the other one doesn't. And I'm not saying we go shovel dirt on the Phillies and that they can't win. In fact, I've gone out of my way here to try to paint a picture as to why it's probably not as bad as we all seem to think it is in the moment. And we'll get to that. But like, dude, one team's fun to watch right now and is playing with some juice, and the other one looks like they need to be electrocuted to be woken up.
The Phillies are not fun to watch right now. They are not. There's nothing about the Phillies that is fun to watch. It is an absolutely
miserable product to watch. It's just uninteresting.
Yeah, it's because you sit there and you're like, okay, well maybe no. Well, maybe no. It's all fits and starts with them. And when you have fits and starts consistently, it becomes frustration. And you become like almost agnostic to their outcome, because it's like I don't care right now because it's the same thing over and over again. And that's damn frustrating. And you're spot on, man, on the Trey Turner thing. Like, the guy is just not. He just doesn't do it enough. Here and there, you have Trey Turner comes through and has a couple games, gets hot for a week, and then he goes back.
Where were you the 2-day stretch where Trey Turner went 5 for 7 against the Marlins?
Right, like it had, and in the end, his numbers will be okay. But that's not good enough for $300 million. If you're being paid $300 million, you need to be better than okay.
And by the way, it's not a product of bad luck, which I want to talk a little bit about luck, which I thought played a factor this week in this series too, by the way,
Yes.
especially yesterday. But I mean, I just said it a minute ago. Turner, 16th in OPS of qualified shortstops, of which there are 21. Just to put that in perspective, he has a 669 OPS. JP Crawford has a 714 OPS right now. And he's 18th in expected batting average and 19th in expected slug out of those 21 guys. Like, this isn't, oh man, the wind, or, he's had a handful of hits taken away, or a bloop here and a bloop there, and this looks a lot better. Like, this is a guy that right now through 25 games, only 25 games, we've seen him go on these runs for 2 weeks where he pops 5 home runs. Everything gets back up. It looks pretty good. Maybe that's coming. But they could have used him this week, and what he did instead was gave them, let's see here, 1 for 12 with 2 walks and no extra base hits. You pay a guy $30 million, the criticism is fair. This isn't a young guy. This isn't a guy on a $3 million deal. You can't not pay a guy $300 million and get a 669 OPS and just being he's not a difference maker. You got to be a difference maker.
I want to ask you a question that Rob Thompson was asked yesterday. I want to see if you give the same answer that he gave. Because I'm not sure anybody, and to be honest, I didn't read this. I didn't read everybody yet this morning, but I'm just curious if somebody wrote this quote or not. So maybe you haven't seen it. So here's the question. Are the Phillies kind of caught in between right now because they're at the plate I'm talking about? Because they've had this whole focus on changing their approach, being more patient, keeping the balls in the zone, seeing more pitches, and what you're getting is a lot more on base. I mean, they're one of the best on base teams in baseball, but you're not getting productivity because you're not getting extra base hits. They had 3 the entire Mets series. They had 11 hits yesterday, all singles. Mm-hmm. Like, are they caught in between a change in approach and what they actually really are?
Yeah, I mean, they might be. The Phillies are 4th, by the way, tied for 3rd with the Diamondbacks in team on base percentage at 340, which is really good. And the team that they're going to see this weekend is number 1 at 346 in the Cubs. And it's an interesting point because they are 21st in slug right now. And we talk about how they live and die by the home run. Well, guess what? They're 22nd in home runs per game as a team. Like, they're not really showing a lot of
right.
pop, a lot of damage here. And maybe there's such an emphasis on let's work counts. Let's make sure that we're not chasing, that you're getting outside of what you're good at and who you are. But from a team standpoint, the numbers might bear that out. But from an individual standpoint, to whom does that apply? Like, who is the guy that we would say right now is other than Turner? Turner might be the only guy I'd say that really plays itself out for. I mean, Schwarber's from a power perspective been good. Alec Boehm can't hit home runs. Like, that's the bottom. Like, we're 100 at bats in Alec Boehm's season. He's up to 230. Good job by him. He's hitting, I think, 340 over his last 10 games, his 10-game hitting streak. But he still doesn't have a home run this season. He's 100 at bats in. So, like, that's what he is. He's not a home run hitter. He's a slap hitter. He's 6'4", 230 pound slap hitter. I mean, just what it is. I don't know who has the thump at this point. Does JT Realmuto have the thump? If I gave you over under 10 home runs for JT Realmuto this season, he stands at 1 right now. What would you take?
I'll take the over, but only slightly.
Okay. So like, I think that part of this is just the reality that they just aren't, they're on the downside in terms of that. Like, they just are. They're not a power team. I mean, Schwarber probably can get you to 40 when he heats up again. He's cooled off. Harper probably can give you 30, 35 max, I'd say. Other than that,
that's it. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you might get 25 out of Castellanos.
You're going to need get your 25 games in now. I mean, you're really going to need Turner to get on one to get the 20, and he might.
Yeah.
But
we went through this before, right? We've been through this before.
We did this a couple years ago where the Phillies were like, I think, bottom 7 in home runs. And then there ended up being 5 of them that got the 20, So there is a precedent and a recent one for that. And maybe that's something that we should take into consideration. And a month from now, we'll be like, oh, well, the power's back. It's hitting season. Maybe.
Yeah, well, that's why I asked you the question, because Rob gave the answer of no, they're not in between. That they're just going through a stretch right now. They're going to slug. They're going to hit. They're going to do it. He's confident, and so sometimes I know fans are tired of hearing Rob just be dismissive of the current problem and that it's going to rectify itself. But the one thing I will say is he's usually right. That said, what happens though when you take that approach is you may be right, but when things start going bad again, they get like this again, and there's too much of a too much of
variance.
Ebb and flow.
There's too much variance, and then when you go through these spells, you're not good enough to overcome and fight through and be resourceful enough within a game flow to find ways to win games. That's the problem.
Yeah, and so look, the Phillies kind of, let's look at the construction of this. They believe, their philosophy is that with that variance being so wide, they feel that having elite starting pitching can be enough to kind of get you through when you're struggling offensively. And when you look at it from 1,000 feet, that makes sense. It does. You sit there and go, okay, yeah, all right. Well, when we're not hitting, we can rely on the fact that we have great pitching and we're going to win some games thanks to our pitchers, because even when we're not hitting. And that's true. But is it enough? And that's where you got to start questioning what things are like with this offense, because I don't know where it's going to come from. Like, I look at the offense and I say, and I'm still bullish on Stott. I know he didn't start yesterday. I thought that was kind of stupid considering he had a 9-game hitting streak, but whatever. But I still think that he's going to be a much improved player from last year overall. And you already mentioned Schwarber and Harper. Great. Where else is it coming from with the guys you have here? Because I don't see where else it's coming from.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the best version of Nick Castellanos that you're going to get. I mean, right. Series this week, but I don't think there's a whole lot more that he can give you than what he's given you so far.
Right.
Does the catching position give you anything more? Like, I don't know. Catcher's actually kind of an underrated issue on this team right now. I mean, the Phillies catchers collectively are hitting .214 with a .610 OPS. They have 5 extra base hits and 89 at bats so far. You know, as a Mets fan, I'm loving this. You should feel good about your squad this morning.
SM checking in.
Yeah, I mean, you should feel good about it. Where I look at this, and I think that the biggest frustration, you talk about, like, is there enough offense there, and the Phillies feel good about the starting pitching. Phillies, I'll segue to this. Like, where should you as a Phillies fan hold out some hope here? I mean, assuming Christopher Sanchez is okay, and it sounds like they averted disaster there, we'll see. Wouldn't be the first time that the Phillies tell you something's not a big deal and it turns into a big deal. Philly starters, though, 4th in wins above replacement Fangraphs. They're 1st in strikeouts per 9 right now. This is starting staff. They're the only staff in baseball that struck out more than 10 batters per 9 innings. They're 1st in strikeout to walk rate. They're 9th in ERA, and part of that is because they've been sort of unlucky. They're actually 26th in batting average of balls in play. So, like, they've had some bad luck with batted balls. This rotation's been pretty good, and I thought Zach Wheeler was really good yesterday. I thought Aaron Nola got away with one to Soto on Monday night, and it could have turned his start into a disaster. But to his credit, he took a deep breath and really bared down from there on out. And the way things have been going for him, I'll mark that start as a pretty big positive step in the right direction. The issue, though, is this, okay? And this is where I think I've landed, and the one thing I feel pretty certain about. You can get away with the variance in the lineup like we're talking about if you have the starting pitching and you have bullpen depth. And the problem for the Phillies right now is that the variance is in play offensively at the moment, and they just don't have the bullpen depth to survive it. So what happens is you take in yesterday's game and you start bitching about Jordan Romano, right? Well, you probably don't have to bitch about Jordan Romano if in this series, Kyle Schwarber doesn't go 2 for 11 with no extra base hits. Bryce Harper goes 1 for 11 with no extra base hits. Trey Turner goes 1 for 12 with no extra base hits. Castellanos 1 for 12, no extra base hits. I mean, like, you can't have those 4 guys not make an impact offensively and live to tell about it unless you have just absolutely lights out pitching from the first inning to the 10th.
And it's asking a lot.
That's asking a lot.
It's asking a lot of your pitchers to kind of pitch that way every inning. Like that was the one thing I could tell you being up there, Bob. Like every inning, I felt like those pitchers were high leverage situations.
That taxes the guy. It's not just, I threw X amount of pitches, or I had this many up downs, or I pitched this many days in a row. When every time you come into a game, you have almost no margin for error. That really does impact from a mental stand. I mean, you have to empty the tank all the time in those situations.
Yeah, you really do. You can't kind of, just try and ease on through an outing for one. And that's part of the problem this year is with the bullpen is that they haven't had those games. The Phillies haven't had a game where they just kind of could go on cruise control.
Except for Saturday, and they, almost lit that one on fire. But really, that has been the exception so far. They've not been in many spots where they can just put it on cruise control and say, all right, it's the 5th inning. We got this one today. We don't have to be so fine. We don't have to use our best arms to get through it. And that's the reality of it. I mentioned these guys. I just mentioned those 4, and then you throw Real Muto into the mix. And for the series, those 5 guys were 7 for 58 with 1 extra base hit. They slugged 290 as a team against the Mets this week.
It was awful. It was just awful to watch. And look, it was just, I literally would, I'm sitting there in the press box at, we're just to the left of home plate for where the visiting media sits. And it was like every inning that the Mets came up to bat, and even the Phillies had a bunch of 1, 2, 3 innings against the Mets too. Like their pitchers pitched well, but every time the Mets would come up, it just felt like they can't make a mistake here. You can't make a mistake here. You can't let anybody on base here. It's what it really, because the lineup just wasn't doing anything. And I felt it, like at a point I felt bad for them. I felt bad for those pitchers because it was like they're out there grinding just to keep the Phillies in the game. And the Phillies were in every game. So you got to look at the pitching and say your pitching did its part for the most part in that series. Where was the lineup? And that's what the disappointment is for me at this point.
You get to the game on Tuesday night, and you have a spot late. You can't keep it close. Kirkering again. Ruiz has had issues. Romano yesterday, but I mean, ultimately, this does come down to offense, and I think you can fix a bullpen. I don't think that you can turn a bad bullpen into a great one in the middle of the year, but I do think that there's probably a world where this thing can straighten itself out a little bit. Where it's not a total disaster. But when you have this aging core and you have these guys that aren't producing, I think that is where a lot of people feel like, well, now what? And look, one of the biggest things about this is they're 13-12, and we can talk about, hey, it's really not all that bad. But I'll just keep coming back to something I've said now numerous times, which is the issues in the offseason were pretty obvious. There were some what appeared to be obvious solutions, whether that be moving on from a couple positional players, changing the dynamic, the makeup of this team a little bit. The bullpen looked like it was a concern at the end of last season. Those guys were leaking oil a little bit. Then you lose 2 of your arms. You replace them with a question mark in Romano and a guy in Joe Ross, who is just sort of an innings eater at this point as a swingman.
Well, although he
did a nice job, kept him in the game the other night. Yeah. And I think, there's a place for that guy on this roster, but you don't want to ask too much of him either.
Right.
So when you have these obvious issues and then the inaction that they had in the offseason, and then this is what you get, and it looks exactly like what you got at the end of last season, the frustration level, I think, surpasses what the actual play on the field is. It's like, this is not as horrible as it seems, but it feels way worse because you're sitting in your chair yesterday watching that game or watching this series, and you're going like, well, I told you, we all knew this was going to happen. And I think that cranks up the frustration beyond probably what it even should be.
Understood. And it's interesting that you say it the way you say it that way, because I want to get into something that happened yesterday that was completely unexpected as far as the conversation was concerned. So before the game, usually the way this works is you on a day game, you get the locker room opens, you get about 45 minutes in the clubhouse, and then you go in the manager's office and you talk to the manager before the game. And you wander out to the field, just in case there's a player you want to talk to or whatever. And then you head back upstairs and you wait for the game to start. And so after Rob talks, everybody wanders out to the field and Dombrowski's out there and, kind of throws together an unscheduled scrum with the media. And it was mostly about Christopher Sanchez. I mean, that was what everybody wanted to talk about. Like, what's your level of concern? Why there's no MRI, et cetera, et cetera. And, they just think it's, hey, there's no structural damage. We think he'll be fine. Okay, great. And then I give credit to Destiny Lazardo from Phillies Nation, because she asks, out of the blue, she asks Dombrowski about the bullpen and, talking about losing the two guys that they lost last year and not really replacing them with anybody other than Romano. And then Dombrowski comes out and tells us that, well, we offered Jeff Hoffman pretty much the same thing he signed for. But we offered him that at the beginning of the offseason. They were very aggressive going after him. At the time, Hoffman didn't want to take that contract. The Phillies had to make a decision on Romano versus, I guess he said, a couple other people that they were discussing at that time. And so they signed Romano. And then Hoffman ends up, but Hoffman doesn't sign until a month later after Romano, right? And that contract comes back down. Obviously, he was looking for more money at the time that he tells the Phillies no. He was looking for more money, doesn't get it. Actually meets with the Orioles and with the Braves. Both of them declined to sign him because they had concerns about medicals. And then ultimately signs with the Blue Jays. But the Phillies never really engaged with him. And that's the concern to me. It's like, okay, the guy hasn't signed. He's obviously not getting the money that he was looking for when he said no to you a month ago. Why not go back to him and say, hey, Jeff, would you consider this now? And the response that Dave gave to Destiny on that is what concerned me. He said, well, we had already made our signing. So let's break this down a little further, Bob, okay?
This is a guy that was here, by the way, who was very productive for you, that people in that clubhouse liked a lot.
Yeah.
It wasn't like an outsider that they had a chance to grab at value. Like, they had this guy.
Yeah. So let's break it down further.
Yeah.
In December, you were willing to spend $39 million for 3 years. Let's just say that's, I don't know if that was the exact parameters. He didn't give us specifics, but let's just say that's what it was. You were willing to spend $39 million for 3 years to sign Jeff Hoffman. Jeff Hoffman says no. So you go and you sign Romano, 1 year, $8.5 million. Then a month later, you're not willing to spend that $39 million 3 years for Jeff Hoffman. Was the difference really that $8.5 million extra? So did the stupid money that John Middleton says he's always willing to spend have a limit? And was that limit $39 million? And then you go beyond that $39 million? And this is what happens? Like, that to me is what's I look at that and say, what the hell? Like, if you're all in to win, you're going to make $8.5 million be the difference between winning and dealing with this bullpen?
So this is an interesting, these conversations I think are always very, very interesting and pretty complex too. John Middleton has been received, I think, very positively in this city, especially in recent years. He says the right things. I want my trophy back. He's spent a lot of money. Let's just talk in facts here. This season, the Phillies have the fourth highest payroll allocation in the sport, behind only the Dodgers, the Mets, and the Yankees. $284 million, roughly dedicated to the 25 payroll. They've been a top 5 payroll now for the last number of years. He's gone out. He's committed to big signings, veteran players, splashy names. He's went out and he's done it. So I'm not going to even sit here and try to pretend that the guy or this ownership group is cheap. That said, Phillies are worth $3.2 billion, according to CNBC, and they generated $528 million of revenue last year. They do pretty well over there, you know? And they've brought in other owners into this group lately. It kind of makes you wonder. Like, we all look at this and say that this team had a championship or has a championship window. Probably hard to say has one right now this morning. But that signing was, or lack of signing, or lack of addition or replacement was substantial. And it was pretty obvious in the moment. So yeah, is there a concern that they're at their threshold and they're saying no more? You have to make it work with this amount of money. Like, is that fair? And that's the question. Is that fair? Does he say, look, I've spent the money. I've given you the ability to go out and spend a ton of money. I haven't gotten the return on my investment in terms of a championship payoff. Could you argue that he's gotten his return on investment in terms of dollars? Maybe. I don't know. Like, I don't know the Phillies operating costs. I don't know exactly what the checkbook looks like. But if you really, really want it, and you talk about legacy, and I need to get another trophy, I got to get it back. You know, when the president of baseball operations comes out and says, well, we had made our signing, we didn't revisit it. It's not a great look. And I almost wonder what that dynamic is now between Dombrowski and Middleton. I assume it's good. You know,
yeah.
I said it last week or earlier this week. You can say what you want about Dave Dombrowski's offseason. It was not great. And I don't know whose fault that was. Maybe it was the ownership's fault. But it wasn't good. But he has put this organization in a place where it had not been for a decade. You know, it is now a functioning quality operation. It's a good team. It's respected around the sport. Like, they needed an adult to run things, and they got it. And they've won a lot of games the last number of years. And you have to give them credit for that. I assume that has built a lot of goodwill between those two. But yesterday, the way that read to me was Dombrowski going, don't look at me. I know. What was I couldn't do anything about it. And that is interesting to me.
Right. Right. And that was my takeaway too, Bob. That was my takeaway too. Like, I was surprised by that, by hearing
it just has a little bit of feel like, and I get it. There's like a human element to this, right? If I would stay off Twitter if I ran a baseball team, and I probably wouldn't listen to sports talk radio. I would not do well with that. But I'd probably get tired of being like, yeah, look, everyone's taking a shit on me here. Well, guess what? There's more to it than you know. And I got to clear my name a little bit. You know, like that's sort of what that felt like to me yesterday. I don't know.
We got a comment here from Chris who says, Dombrowski's done a horrible job. Horrible. Name one good trade he's made. It's easy to throw money at guys like Turner. Name some good moves. I'd argue that the one from this offseason that has been a success so far has been Jesus Lazardo. I mean, he's only leads the majors in pitcher WAR, right? I think maybe WAR overall. I don't know if
he did as of Monday.
Yeah. So I mean,
Strong,
just saying, like,
it's been good.
Matt,
I mean,
Matt
you went out, you got Schwarber. I mean, I think that's been a net positive overall. Again, it required a lot of money to do it. I'm not going to sit here and say that he's made a ton of savvy moves or that it's been phenomenal, but I mean, I think he's done some things that you know, I would give some credit to, but yeah,
for sure. I mean, come on, you know, they've been a championship contender for the last 3 years, and it's no secret that was the reason that was the case.
But I think you could sit here this morning as a fan and go like, hey, well, where were you in 23 when you had a chance to really drop the hammer and make a huge move and give this team what it truly needed? At the deadline last year, that deadline was very lackluster. I mean, we processed that in real time. We're doing shows where we're like, I guess. I mean, I don't know. And when you look at it and look at how things played out, maybe you needed a little bit more, not just in terms of talent, but just in terms of something that made those guys say, like, all right, we're on a 97 win pace. We have a chance to be one of the best teams in history. This front office just went out and delivered this guy for us,
Yeah.
And maybe that gives them the shakeup that they needed. This team does look like, I'm not a big fan of like, let's just fire someone for the hell of it. But this team looks like it needs its cage rattled a little bit. Somebody needs to get uncomfortable here at some point. And I'm not going to tell you that it's the hitting coach or that Thompson's got to be fired or that they need to just trade or cut someone for the hell of it. But these guys do look like they need to get uncomfortable a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that looks like to make them uncomfortable. Is it like do you fire the hitting coach? Like, is that?
I think that's what a lot of people would start with. I mean, I've heard that suggested not just by the fans, but there's some people out there saying it's probably time. I mean, if you like Kevin Long so much, then hit for him.
Right.
I mean, and unfortunately, like that doesn't seem totally fair, but pro sports aren't always fair. You can't just go status quo when things aren't working. When there's a certain level of investment in play and that you're not getting the most out of what you got. Like, we can sit here and talk about all the Phillies issues. The bullpen is short. The GM has left them in a little bit of a light spot here. Maybe the ownership group isn't going all in the way that they say they want to. The middle of the order has to do more. All of that is true, but when you stand back and look at all of the different issues, you say, like, this team's better than this. Like,
yeah,
there's a little bit more than this. We're not getting everything we can out of it. Sometimes you got to find something.
Yeah. And it's funny, Bob, because I mean, me, I kind of like I look series by series, but I also look at, longer stretches of games in advance. And at this point, at the beginning of the season, I thought the Phillies would be 15-10. They're 13-12. They're 2 games off the pace that I thought that they would be at. And if they were 15-10, I'd say that's a good record to start the year. It's a good start, kind of where I exactly where I expect them to be.
Mm-hmm.
But being only 2 games off that pace, they look like a completely different team than I thought they would be at 15-10. Like and I think that's what you're trying to get at. It's like there is just something that's not right with the team, with the roster as it sits right now. Doesn't mean it can't be fixed. Doesn't mean they can't figure it out and get going back in the other direction. But there's something off. And I don't know exactly what it is, where it is, what that move would be that would shake everything up. And I'm not convinced that firing a coach would matter at this point. I got hitting coach or whatever. Like, I don't think that would matter at this point. I don't think that that's going to suddenly change these guys and make them different. These guys are pretty set in their ways in the way that they approach the game. And I don't know. Here's a question. Here, let me throw this at you, because I don't know. I haven't really thought about it. It just popped into my head. So they've been trying, like we've talked about the on base thing, right? They're trying to get on base more this year, and they're doing a good job of that. Would you rather this, or would you rather they go back to being the free swinging, hit the long ball, put up a lot of runs, but they chase everything and they may strike out a lot and frustrate you that way? What's the better of the two?
I like to see some thump, man. I mean, look, It's real too, by the way. This isn't just like something where you're like, I feel like that they're being a little bit more passive. Percentage of pitches at batter swings outside of the strike zone this season, Phillies are 25th. So there are only 5 teams that have swung at fewer pitches out of the zone on average than the Phillies. I mean, this has obviously been a point of emphasis, and we asked for this.
Yes, we
but
did.
You would think in real time, as you're saying, just be more disciplined. You're so damn good that if you stop chasing pitches, you're going to get more pitches in the zone, and then as a byproduct of that, do more damage. But that has not been the case at all.
Right. It's actually turned out to be the opposite of that. Now they're believing in this. They think that this will come. They feel like, there was a lot of talk, and nobody wrote it. But I'll be honest, I kind of rolled my eyes when this conversation was going on. But there was a lot of talk about weather, and that the Phillies have played a bunch of bad weather games, and that's kind of impacted their ability to slug. Once the weather gets a little bit better, they'll start slugging better. Okay, fine, whatever. And part of me says I understand that, but part of me is like, don't use that as an excuse. Let's not put that out into the world, because people will be pissed off about it if they hear that. But the reality of it is that, okay, maybe. So I could see giving it a little bit more time to see if in fact that does pan out, and that what you're seeing as far as better on base will lead to better pitches to hit and will lead to better slug, better productivity. But if it gets to a point, Bob, where you're, 50 games into this season and that's not happening, I'd rather they go back to chasing again and put balls out of the yard.
So where does this go from here? I mean, you have a series now against the Cubs and this team has played very well and they have scored a lot of runs. And do they recover? Do they lick their wounds today and they head to Chicago and they get back on track and beat up on a good team and then come back home and, hey, you guys all overreacted, you all panicked, and we're totally fine, we're back in it? Or does this continue to spiral on them in the short term, and it creates a situation where we're on May 15th and we're talking about a team that's just hovering around 500? It's like, what do you think? What do you think the response is? And then I'm going to ask you the big picture question, which I think a lot of people are starting to wonder about. You said, well, what do? Do you fire the hitting coach? I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and advocate for the hitting coach to be fired today, but I would tell you that at some point in the month of May, as you creep up towards Memorial Day, if this team's 500 or below, something's got to happen. You got to make a change.
Yeah, it's funny. We Tim Kelly and I wrote a mailbag today, and one of the key questions that we got in the mailbag, a couple people asked it, and so we decided to make it kind of the first thing is should Rob Thompson be on the hot seat? And my response to that was no, not right now. I don't think you can blame the manager. Like, find me a game, one of the 12 losses that the Phillies had this year, and you go, that one's completely on the manager. He screwed it up and they lost because of the manager. You can't find one.
Yeah, no, I agree. But I would say I didn't really – I hate repeating points that we had previously made earlier in the same week, but I did not think that Rob Thompson had a great Saturday, Sunday, and I think that there was a residual effect of that in this series. And I didn't think that they were set up for success in this series. But that being said, Russ, for instance, tweets out, well, like, why go to Romano there? Well, who else are you going to go to yesterday?
Yeah, who are you going to go to in that
team? Now, I have questions about whether or not Rob Thompson's message is landing at this point. In 22, 23, those guys were running through a wall for him. They played well. They played for one another. There felt like there was a real rallying, like a camaraderie there. I'm not going to, say it was all about the Spotify playlist postgame. I really think that there was something to it. There was a unification when he became the manager of that team. It was real. I just do wonder, though, at some point, we've seen it happen in every sport. It happens all the time. A message just sort of runs stale. A certain delivery, an approach just runs stale. The culture that you once cultivated that was a positive, it can get comfortable, which I wonder about. I really do. I think that at one time that there was this, I have your back, I care about you, we're in this together. But at some point, that only goes so far. I don't know.
Yeah.
But tactically, I think it doesn't matter who the manager is. You guys, me included in real time, Boa, Manuel, Francona, McCannon, Sandberg. Sandberg totally warranted. He was terrible. But like, we did, this is what you do as a baseball fan. You bitch about the manager. You complain about the manager. You second guess everything about the manager. But I do think it's fair to talk about where this team's dynamics and chemistry are at this point. And you do look at the manager. When the manager comes out and says, we're a good baseball team, and he never gets up, and then you watch a team that just doesn't look like they get up. It's easy to say that the team takes on the personality of the manager because it looks like it.
Yeah, the vibes thing is definitely missing. There's no question about it. Like that, the team's they're not having fun.
They're not having fun, and they probably hate listening to stuff like this. And I'm sure it's actually kind of, other than cashing the paycheck and getting to play a kid's game for a career, like it's probably kind of miserable in there right now.
Yeah,
relative to the rest of the league.
For sure.
They're probably about as miserable as any team outside of like the bottom feeders. Like for being a good team, they're probably about as miserable as you can be.
Yes. And that something needs to happen to spark that again. Now, Harper was asked about that last night, and he said, well, yeah, winning cures everything, right? And he's not wrong. Sure. If you win games, all of a sudden, you start feeling good about yourself. You start having fun again. There's life in the clubhouse again. But I noticed that this was something, and I brought it up just in conversation with a couple other people in the media. Last week, Ranger Suarez was back with the team for a few days before he went off to Lehigh Valley for his rehab assignment. And like he came into that clubhouse, and all of a sudden it was like vibrant again. And everybody was laughing, and he was like, playing jokes on people, and there's a lot of smiles. And you could see it as you walked in there before a game. It's like, this has been missing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I'm not saying it was just Ranger. I mean, there's a lot of personalities in that clubhouse, but like it changed for a day or day and 2 days. It kind of changed what that feeling was like in that clubhouse. I wonder if they're missing those kinds of fun personalities that they don't have.
Yeah, well, if your fun personalities are either not there, they're not playing, or they're hitting 095, they can't be fun personalities. Like if I'm one of these veteran guys, and Brandon Marsh, who we know has that personality and is a good dude and all of that, and adds a little bit of that into a clubhouse, he comes in and he's yucking it up and he's 0 for April. It's hard to he's not going to do that. And so then that is missing. Garrett Stubbs, say what you will. He doesn't deserve to be here. I don't want to see him ever, whatever, wherever your take is at on Garrett Stubbs. I mean, seems to be a lot of animosity and a lot of finger pointing at a backup catcher for the Phillies' failures in recent years, which is insane to me, but whatever. Like it or not, like that was real. Like those guys loved him. He was a lot of fun. Like, you need that sometimes. Like this game does get hard when you're getting every single thing that you do criticized day in, day out. Like you need a little bit of that, and they don't seem to have it.
Yeah. Something's that element is absolutely missing, and I think if they brought some of that back in some capacity, I think you might start to see things be a little bit different, just a little bit. I mean, I don't think it turns it completely around, but I think it definitely changes your mentality.
I've been meaning to do this conversation with you, and I guess this is a good time to do it. It actually feels like a perfect transition into it. One thing that I have gathered over the last handful of years, whether it is being down there or being in a clubhouse, I've had the unique opportunity to kind of work as an unbiased journalist in the professional setting, and I've also been removed from it where I can kind of take in the sport and digest it like a fan would, and I try to blend those two things together on this show, and you know that. But a lot of these players don't like talk show hosts. They don't like these podcasts. They don't like the way that they're talked about. I'm sure it's probably pretty hard to log online and search your name and see the things that people write about you when you're going through a slump. Like there's a reality in which it's pretty unpleasant for these guys, I'm sure. And that's the cost of doing business. And they get paid handsomely to deal with those things. And I understand what most people would say in response. But my question to you is, if I were to walk into the clubhouse right now, and let's just say Trey Turner, for instance, has been taking notes on the things that I've been tweeting or things that I've said on this show. And he says, I don't want to talk to you. And this hasn't happened, by the way. This is kind of like a hypothetical, but like, I don't want to talk to you. All you guys do is rip us. Who's in the right there? Like, and we've seen these situations it play out in the past. I mean, we've seen this happen between Sealski and the Flyers. Like we've seen things boil over where the criticisms are not well taken by the players. Like, my question is, like, the Phillies have to know right now that this entire city's basically like, these guys suck, blow it up, right? So, like, how do they process that? Like, what dynamic does that create? Does that make them more miserable? Do they shrug it off? Does it galvanize them when things go wrong? Do they let it eat at them? Like, what do you think happens here? Because that's the one thing that's different here now. Like, it's different this season. The criticism is ramped up to the highest degree possible before it becomes apathy. We are not at apathy with this team.
No.
So, like, what is this situation going to do to the team? Is, I guess, what I'm asking you as the guy that follows them around.
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's different every year. It's different with every sport. It's different over time. It used to be back in the day, and I say back in the day, when I was first covering pro teams, where guys would come up to you and they all read everything you wrote, and they would come up to you and, either tell you, hey, appreciate the story, or, hey, that criticism was deserved, or, dude, what the hell are you doing, man? Like, I'm out there busting my ass and you're killing me. Like, I mean, those conversations were had all the time. I don't see them now so much. I don't see that as much now, but I do think that players do take stuff a little bit more personally today. I think this generation of athlete is a little bit more sensitive, and it has to be because of social media, because we see them on their phones, sitting in their locker, and they're scrolling through, and they'll tell you they're not reading stuff about themselves, but they absolutely are. And yeah, I mean, if you see a bunch of people, if you're searching your name and you're seeing a bunch of people like killing you all the time, and then you see somebody's story that maybe criticized your play, who are you going to take it out on? You're not going to take it out on the thousands of fans because they're kind of anonymous. You're going to take it out on the person who wrote the story. So for us, it kind of becomes, finding a way to thread the needle with that relationship as reporter and player, and sit there and say, yeah, we have the ability to criticize, but we're also going to do it in a way where we're not going to absolutely bury you. Right.
It's interesting because one of the things that I have seen when things start to go wrong for teams, and I know that you have seen these people on Twitter, and like, not only is it at the players, sometimes it's at the media people too. Like people get on youre or people like us, like, why don't you ask some tough questions? Right. Another softball for Rob. And I'm like, well, there's a fine line. I think sometimes, like, what do you think overall? Do you think I'm going to put you on the spot here? Do you think that it's a fair beat? Do you think that sometimes that the questioning, or maybe even the lack of quantity in terms of volume of reporters down there, like, you're down there every day, it's a smaller group for the most part. Like, do you think that the questioning sometimes is a little bit easy on the Phillies, or do you think that it's right on where it should be?
No, I don't think it's too easy. What I think that fans need to understand is that what you see on a press conference isn't the only questions being asked. What you see on television are not the only conversations being had. There are a lot of conversations had with players and reporters, with the manager and reporters, that is not on camera, that is not recorded, and questions get asked. And it's, am I going to sit here and tell you that we're asking the questions that the fans are screaming about, like the hard-hitting questions that fans want us to ask? Yes, but not in the way that they want us to ask them, right? There's the way we do our job is we try and get to those answers, but we take a different path to get to those answers, right? Because you don't want to put somebody on the spot. You don't want to put them to where they get defensive and get their back up. And so you say, all right, I'm trying to get there, but it's going to take a few questions to get there. Like, those conversations are happening.
162 game season, and if you just understand the sport, things aren't always going to go well. And while you may have questions that you could ask, going in there every day and being like, why can't this team hit with 2 outs and runners in scoring position?
Yeah.
What are you going to do about the hitting coach?
And
Rob, are you frustrated that your hands are tied because your bullpen blows and you know it? Like you can't do that every day.
Right. You can't ask that question. You can't ask that question that way. And as Amy says, anonymous social media posters make it too personal. They would never say the same thing when athletes face. And she's 100% correct with that. It absolutely would be. But then, then you got this guy who says, or I assume it's a guy. I don't want to say. Maybe I shouldn't assume. It's a rap sports says that's why this version of the Philly sports media has failed the public. And I disagree. I don't think we're failing the public at all.
Well, so what is failing the public? What is supposed? Like that's my question. Like, what's supposed to happen? And I mean that. Like, that's not like a rhetorical thing. Like, the question really is what's supposed to happen. The media's more concerned with keeping their status quo. Like, what is supposed to happen post game? Hey, Rob. Did you think that was a fucking disgrace yesterday? Because I did. What's the accountability in that? Like,
right.
And the thing is, like, if you want to get access and you want as a fan to understand what's going on, like reporters can't do that because you will get shut out. Like, there's a line you have to walk here a little bit.
Right.
So,
right.
I don't know. I mean, there's this idea that like the reporters of yesteryear would have crushed these guys. And I guess maybe they would have, like, but what does that mean? Like, what did that look like? What's the question that hasn't been asked down there that needs to be? And I don't know. Maybe there needs to be more of that. I don't know. I just don't know what it is.
We've spent the past week talking to Rob. It's got to be 6 different people have asked the question. I've done it myself, and we've asked it in multiple different ways about not hitting with runners in scoring position. And finally, yesterday, Rob was like, I don't care about that. Like there's a frustration level on his end too, because we are asking the same things that people want to ask, just we're asking it in a more polite way, and we're trying to get to that answer. All right.
But, the thing is, like, you can ask that all you want. Like, so they're hitting 251 with runners in scoring position, which actually, like, better than league average, by the way. The problem is that they don't hit with 2 outs and runners in scoring position. And so from a momentum aspect, it's a killer because that 2 out hits that score runs has a tremendous impact on the way the games unfold. And that's where they're struggling, right? But what does the manager say? Well, we're tight. We're trying to do too much. We're lacking a little bit of focus. Like, there's no real good answer there. That's the thing. Like, the things that are frustrating you a ton, there's really not a great answer to. Like, what do you like? Hey, Rob, why did you go to Jordan Romano yesterday in the tie game or holding a 1-run lead in the 10th inning? Because I had nobody else. What? Okay. Like, so what does that answer do for you? And I guess that's where I come back to.
Yeah. No. It's the truth. I mean, Look, I don't want to try and make
glass front office. Like, I don't know. Like, is that?
I don't want to make it. I honestly don't want to make it sound like I'm complaining that our job is hard, right, Bob? I mean, look, we get paid, and we get paid well to talk about sports and to write about sports, and like that's what we do. And so, in the reality of it, this shouldn't be a complaint because I get to do something that I love doing, but it's not always the easiest road to traverse when you have to be there and talk to these people every day and you want to get answers to questions every day. If you are berating them constantly and you're badgering them and you're being aggressive toward them with your line of questioning all the time, you're not going to get those responses for very long. Like they'll take it every once in a while. They'll take the tough questions every once in a while. But if it's consistently beating them up, you're not going to get any response. And to think, if you think that needs to happen, I ask you to come down, get yourself a credential, come show up and do it and see how long you last. See how long you want last. To see. Yeah, seriously, be that person and see how long you last. I promise you won't. Okay, so there is a fine line. And look, we're talking about a baseball podcast, so I don't want to on a baseball podcast, so I don't want to wander into a different sport. But there's a reason that I've been able to cover hockey for 25 years and have people tell me the stuff that they tell me, quietly off the record, on background, sourced information. Like, the reason I'm able to get that is because I don't go down there and scream in their faces and ask, jackass questions, just to try and, make a point or have a viral moment. Like, that doesn't happen. That my career doesn't happen if I acted that way. Okay. So that it's the same thing in baseball. It's no different in any sport that you're in. You have to have a level of respect for the players and the manager, and they'll in turn have a level of respect back for you. And the last thing I want to say on this issue is, as much as we get frustrated and as angry as you can get it with the players, and I get it, and you have every right to be, the reality of it is that these people are the very best at what they do in the world. They are the very best. So to say someone sucks or someone stinks, that's in comparison to the other elite players that they are playing with, right? The fact of the matter is they don't suck. They don't stink. They're amongst the best of the best in the world at what they do. They just are not performing at the best level against the other best players. That's all it is. That's all it is. And so you got to take that into perspective when you're talking to these guys about struggling and about not being, as good as they should be, because they really are the 0.1% of the people who could do this job in the world. And that needs to be understood when you're the person asking the questions.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting conversation just in that it's not like, hey, defend yourself or explain why, journalism's hard. But I mean, I find myself on both sides of that. I've been in a situation where I'm like, okay, well, I'm watching this and this is horrible, and I want to throw something as a fan, like you can't take that down there and be like, hey, Alec Boehm, you haven't hit a home run in 100 at bats. Did you know that? What are you gonna do about it? Like, what do you want? Like,
yeah,
yes,
exactly.
I know. I'm aware that I have not homered. It is bad.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know, man. Yeah. All right. What do you got? One last thing?
Well, one last thing is I wanted to look at a couple of former Phillies and the starts that they're off to and get your response.
Great.
This is fun. That's going to be fun. Austin Hayes for the Cincinnati Reds. It's limited time. He missed the very beginning of the season, but he's been back now for a couple weeks. Hitting 361, 410 on base, 1049 OPS with 3 home runs. More than everybody except for Schwarber and Harper on the Phillies.
How many bats?
I think it's 39 plate appearances so far. Yeah, 3 homers and 39 plate appearances. Did they make a mistake by not bringing back Austin Hayes and going Max Kepler instead?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, yeah. Max Kepler had a couple hits this week, which is good.
I thought he actually had a good game after coming into the game yesterday, to be honest with
you. Look, vindication for Dave Dombrowski. That's really what this is all about. Take a victory lap, Dave. You had it right, just a few months too early.
Yeah. Here's another one, Bob. Sir Anthony Dominguez, through 9 appearances so far with the Baltimore Orioles, yet to allow a run, has only allowed 2 hits.
On a team where all of the pitchers are allowing runs, many runs.
Yeah. Yes, allowed 2 hits in 9 appearances. 10 strikeouts, 6 walks, a little bit high on the walk rate there. But a 0.96 whip. Sir Anthony Dominguez, is he a guy that would help this bullpen right now?
Sir Anthony Dominguez right now would be very palatable to this current group. That would be a nice addition.
Or would we be complaining that he walks too many guys?
He walks too many guys. Are you concerned about Sir Anthony Dominguez's lack of control? Yeah.
Oh man, I just
what else you got? Anything else?
I thought those two really stuck out because I know
it's Gregory Soto up though.
I was going to get him right now. Gregory Soto. Gregory Soto's being Gregory Soto. 10 appearances, 4.15 ERA. Okay. He's allowed
2 blow-up appearances. The rest were clean.
Yeah, 9 hits, 5 walks, 10 strikeouts. Way too many walks. Is 1.615 whip. Typical Gregory Soto.
Okay.
So yeah, that one wasn't worth the
Estevez is having a nice start. I'm surprised you didn't bring that up. Hoffman's obviously been really good.
Well,
so.
We talked about Hoffman obviously because of the thing with Dombrowski. Estevez has been okay, but like Estevez has been Estevez.
Yeah.
Again, another guy walking a ton of people. He's got 9 walks in 11 innings.
Wow.
Estevez.
Wow.
3.27 ERA. He's only given up 5 hits in 11 innings, but 9 walks.
That'll catch up with you eventually.
That's exactly going to catch up to you. Like I don't know. Like those guys that didn't really. Yeah, nobody. I don't think anybody's missing him that much. I think it's Hoffman that everybody's worried about. That they're missing. So
Phillies making playoffs, Anthony?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're not trading Zach Wheeler at the deadline?
No. And we had a couple people, and I missed it earlier. People suggested they should be sellers at the deadline. They will not be sellers at the deadline.
What if they were like 7 games under at the deadline? You'd have to, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, if they're out of it, then yes, you have some free agents.
Are the Phillies going to win again this season?
Yeah, they're never going to win another game. Not going to win another game. But I don't know. Like I don't like them this weekend, Bob. I don't.
Oh boy. Oh man, if they get swept in Chicago.
Well, no, I think they'll win one. I think they'll win one this weekend, and they'll be a 500 team when they come back home. And then all of a sudden, you get the Nationals in here. Maybe you smack them around, and everything's going to be all right with the world again next week. But we talked about this on Monday about the possibility of a 1-5 road trip.
Where they're on their way.
Yeah,
I think you got Taiwan Walker tomorrow, the stopper at Wrigley, afternoon, Friday. Yeah. Lazardo versus Ben Brown. I'll tell you what, Ben Brown beats the Phillies on Saturday, and they lose the first 2 games of the series.
Yeah. It could be crazy.
Good times. All right, good stuff. Yeah. All right, get us out of here.
Yeah, I gotta wrap it up.
I need a beer. It's 10:07 a.m.
10 o'clock in the morning. You need a beer. Hey, don't forget that you can find Phightin Words wherever you subscribe to your podcast, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Pandora, any one of those places. But the best place to find us, and hopefully this is where you find us all the time, is find Phightin Words right here on YouTube. And click that thumbs up, ring the bell. That way you make sure you never miss a show. It's www.youtube.com/@Phightin Words, and find me and Bob twice a week talking Phillies baseball and everything else that's going on out there with the sport of baseball around the major leagues. So for Bob Wankel, I'm Anthony SanFilippo. We will see you again on Monday following the trip in Wrigley. Another off day for the Phillies, and 2 off days in 5 days. But we will talk to you on Monday, and hopefully we have a more positive show than the one we did today, because this one, not good. So for Bob, I'm Anthony. We'll see you on Monday.